Okay, now what are carbohydrates? So, as the name indicates, carbohydrates are molecules that are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Hydrate means water, basically, right? So, carbohydrates are molecules which are composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. What are the main sources from which we can get carbohydrates? So the main sources are grains, milk, fruits, starchy vegetables like potatoes, and also non-starchy vegetables. But those non-starchy vegetables will have carbohydrates in small amounts. I will just write it down for you. The sources of carbohydrates. So there are grains, milk, fruits, starchy vegetables, and non-starchy vegetables. So carbohydrates are also classified into two classes, two forms, according to this book. So there are simple carbohydrates, often known as simple sugars, and complex carbohydrates. But if you look at it in the light of chemistry, there are basically three classes of carbohydrates if we look at it in the light of biochemistry, which will say that there are monosaccharides, oligosaccharides, and there are polysaccharides. Mono means one, so monosaccharides means they are simple sugars, and oligosaccharides would mean they are a bit complex than simple sugars, and they'll have more saccharides or sugar units. And complex carbohydrates would probably include a mixture of polysaccharides and a mixture of not disaccharides, but a mixture of all polysaccharides and oligosaccharides. Some of the oligosaccharides might fall into the complex carbohydrate category. Okay, now there are two basic units in the simple carbohydrates. There are one or two basic units. For example, in sucrose, when you hydrolyze sucrose or you break it in the presence of water, it will break into two units. I'll tell you how that happens. Okay, so when you hydrolyze sucrose, it becomes glucose and fructose. Like it breaks down into two units, which are glucose and fructose. That's what happens when you hydrolyze them. And that's basically happening in our mouth. That's why when you eat some complex sugar, no, not complex, but simple sugar, you'll be feeling some sweet taste. Because they're breaking, the amylase enzyme in our saliva is breaking the glucose, not the glucose, but sucrose into glucose and fructose. Complex carbohydrates are basically long chains of simple sugars. It can be a branched chain or an unbranched chain. So basically that would mean that okay, here I've drawn two pictures. Let me tell you. Okay. Okay, you can see two yellow things. One is a straight line and one is a zigzag one. So that's how we draw the linear structure of simple carbohydrates. And here you can see a complex structure, a purple one. You can see that there is line, and then there are branches coming out, and from the branches there are more branches coming out. So that's how we classify simple and complex carbohydrates. This is a not simple and complex carbohydrates, but branched and unbranched complex carbohydrates. Okay, when they are getting digested, the body would break down the digestible complex carbohydrates into simpler sugars. mostly glucose, and then this glucose is transported to all our cells where it is stored and is used to make energy or used to build macromolecules. Fiber. When you look at a plant's structure, you can see that they have there is a cell wall in their structure. Plants have a cell wall in their structure. Uh, and the cell wall is composed of cellulose. This cellulose cannot be broken down by human body, like by the human digestive system. So animals like herbivores can break it down, but humans cannot break it down. So those kind of complex carbohydrates would serve as fiber, which cannot be broken down by the digestive system in the human intestine. So I will just write the definition of what a fiber is and what is the function of fiber. So when the fiber goes through the digestive tract undigested, it helps push the undigested matter, the matter that is not digestible, the feces, to go out of the digestive system, to get out of it, because we don't need those things, because that will become toxin if it stays for long. Now, another thing that you should know about carbohydrates is that 1 gram of digestible carbohydrate would yield 4 kilocalories for the cells in the body to perform work. And I'm going to put it down here. And what else does carbohydrates do? The carbohydrates are also essential for proper functioning of the nervous system, the heart, and the kidneys. And as mentioned, glucose can be stored in the body in the form of glycogen. It can be stored in form of glycogen. Glycogen is also called animal starch. Glycogen is animal starch basically. And when we don't have a lot of energy, a lot of glucose in our system, this glycogen will break down and make glucose for us, and we'll be able to consume that glucose, and our glucose levels would stay normal. So that's it about carbohydrates. Let's move on to lipids.